Greetings, fellow mortals. One of the things that I've been looking forward to the most in 2022 is God of War Ragnarok. I've always been a fan of the God of War series. I've played all of them except the mobile game, but I don't know if that one should count. God of War 1, 2, Chains of Olympus, Ghost of Sparta, 3, and Ascension. Of course, I did love the 2018 game, but good God, do I wish that they went with some sort of different name for it. It feels as though that was a period where creators were just giving up on the titles. Here are some examples of better names just off the top of my head. God of War, Sins of the Father. God of War Atreus. God of War Bifrost. God of War Norse. God of War Reborn. God of War Odyssey. God of War Midgard. God of War Pantheon Slayer. God of War Rebirth. God of War Redemption. God of War 4. God of War Stop using the year as part of the title because it's annoying. But moving past that, I did think that the 2018 game was a breath of fresh air for the franchise. By the time that I played Ascension, the locked on camera hack and slash type of game felt stale. If they wanted to keep the series going in any meaningful way, they needed change. Especially because they were never going to top the bombacity of God of War 3. The scope in that game was so large that it couldn't be beat. So they had to do a more subdued sequel, and a harder one, in my opinion, at least at the start. I played on normal during my first playthrough, and I got smacked around during the first few hours. God of War has always been a fight with the camera and seeing what's going to happen next. Instead of being too far away, we were so close to Kratos that we saw the pores of his skin. He felt different too. They made him act more tired in combat. Instead of being eager for bloodshed and jumping around everywhere, Kratos rarely left his feet. He seemed to fight because there was no other choice and did it in the most efficient way possible. By the time that Atreus could actually help me during a fight, I did find myself adjusting to the combat. I still never liked the up close and personal look, but I do think that it fit the story that they were trying to tell. Now, this might be me projecting, but I did find it odd how painfully close we were to Kratos at all times. While he's not aware of the audience, we know almost everything about him. Even with a stoic expression spread across his face, I found that I could read Kratos' every thought and emotion. Even when he wasn't saying anything, I could feel his heart. In a lot of ways, we know Kratos more than any living character in his universe. Far more than his son or Mimir. To Atreus, Kratos is the unfailing father figure that wants nothing to do with him. Of course, this was a false assessment, but it's what Atreus believed to be true. Mimir has encyclopedic knowledge of what Kratos has done, but he wasn't there. We were there through Kratos' every action. In fact, we were the ones controlling him. We are so painfully close to him that it's insane. Like I said, that might not be the intent of the close camera. There could be many different reasons for it. But the reason that I can make such an assumption and not feel totally off base is because God of War 4 delights in its lore. It's a game that's proud to technically be the 7th installment in a series. 8 if you count the mobile game. Not to say that there are references thrown out at every single point possible. The events of Ghost of Sparta aren't addressed. Same thing with most of the events of the other games. But you do feel the weight of those games in Kratos' mind. I can see the gears turning. When he looks at Atreus, he remembers his first wife, his daughter, his brother, his mother, and every friend that's ever died in front of him. Not to mention that he's mourning his second wife throughout the entirety of God of War fatherhood. Kratos is in so much emotional pain that he struggles to show affection. Not to mention that all he knows is the Spartan way of raising a child. The last thing that he wants is to actually hurt Atreus, though. He loves his son more than anything, but his entire existence has been rage for a long time. So instead of letting his emotions out, he keeps a mask of indifference on his face. His anger slips out, leaving him appearing like he doesn't want Atreus to begin with. But the opposite is true. Throughout the entirety of God of War Epic Dad Beard, One thing stands out more than the giant fight scenes, emotional moments, and amazing visuals. It was the interactions in the boat. Specifically, there was one story that I think about every time that I remember God of War Absolution. I vividly remember Kratos telling a story of a father frog preventing his son from jumping into the well, but Atreus argued that it wasn't that much of a story. If it was a story, the son would ignore the father and jump into the well no matter what. Then the father would only be able to watch as his son slowly dies. And when I heard that, I thought that's why Kratos doesn't like stories. Because Kratos knows that his son was right. He is painfully familiar with all of the Greek legends. While he's gone out of his way to avoid the Norse mythology, he still has to experience it all. And if this is Atreus' story, then Kratos would prefer that he would meet the tragic end long before his son. And Atreus comes to understand that by the end of God of War boat rides. That's why I think that focusing on Baldur and Freya was the perfect story to re-energize the franchise. There are many aspects of Baldur and Freya's relationship that hits home to Kratos. The son wanting to kill the parent trying too hard to keep their child safe, a fractured relationship, selfishness, anger, hatred, love, regret. Those were all things that Kratos was struggling with Atreus in God of War Parent Trap. He remembers his past family. He destroyed everyone. By the time that he reached God of War 3, he didn't care that his actions were hurting people that he previously cared about. Kratos had gone mad with rage. The underworld was destroyed for his deceased loved ones. Even his daughter suffered. He inadvertently destroyed Sparta when he flooded the world. He killed almost every god in Olympus, all of whom were family in some way. Atreus is the last family member that Kratos has in God of War Foot and Mouth. By the end, the father and son duo come to a better understanding of each other. They openly express how much they care about each other. Hopefully that isn't all destroyed by the start of Ragnarok, because that would be really, really lame. After all, I don't exactly know the full story of that game yet. I haven't gotten to play it, and I can hardly believe that it hasn't been delayed. I might actually have to give the game a few months to settle. I can avoid spoilers. I just don't want to have a broken experience, because it feels like there should have been a delay. Last thing that I want is another Cyberpunk. Story-wise, there are many things that could go wrong here. I feel nervous because it's hard for writers to respect the lore like God of War 7.5 did. It remembered everything that Kratos did without rubbing it in our faces. It remembered the previous games fondly without relying too heavily on them. It was so subtle and careful that it changed my entire perspective on how creators should respect the lore. Because the God of War series is a fantastic tragedy. Okay, throw out the intercourse minigames. I don't defend those or any of the naked breasts, especially in the third game with Poseidon's slave. That was pretty gross. But if you forget about that, the emotions of the series are palpable. I remember every major boss scene. I remember Kratos interacting with his family. I remember Calliope, Pandora, his love for his wife, Deimos, and even his mother. And as time went on, his rage grew until it destroyed the world. It's the ultimate cautionary tale of thirst for power, bloodlust, anger, and revenge. And God of War Revamp is a perfect continuation of all of it. It quietly forgets the cringy parts of the previous games and focuses on the things that matter. I just hope that this new game has as much nuance, but I worry. Based on what I see on Twitter, some of the people working on Ragnarok have the subtlety of a jackhammer. But we'll see. It's one of the few continuing franchises that I have hope for, even if I'm worried because so much could go wrong so quickly. Fortunately, everything that I've seen so far looks good. I'm interested to experience the story, that's for sure. It might come off as a movie game at times, but I think that there's room for that at some point. Usually, it's not my favorite genre of video games, but I like anything if it's done well. Here's hoping that they keep the franchise going strong, because I can't think of any other series that has kept my investment for so long. But what do you think? Are you excited for Ragnarok? Do you think that the God of War lore is as good as I do? Do you think that I'm completely off base here? Did you like my names for God of War? Just be creative with a stupid title and don't name it after the year. Please leave a comment down below. I really want to hear your perspectives. And thank you so much for watching. If you like my takes on storytelling, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It would really help me out. Also, please remember that I'll be self-publishing my novel, Dance of Frozen Death, at the start of 2023. I hope that you will check it out. I appreciate you. Do not